This Torah portion contains references about the selection and affirmation of the king, the priest, and the prophet. Moses tells the children of Israel how to select a king and what principles should govern his behavior. We find that in Deuteronomy chapter 17. Moses describes the set-apart or sanctified status of the priest and the qualities of a prophet of God in chapter 18. The office of king, priest, and prophet are so that the children of Israel will not follow after the ways of the Canaanites, who were already in the promised land. Let's look at Deuteronomy 18, verse 9. When you come into the land which the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to follow the abominations of those nations. What can we learn about our own lives through these instructions for the king, the priest, and the prophet? Yeshua, as the divine Son of God, fulfills all the roles of king, priest, and prophet. And what do these instructions reveal about Yeshua's threefold mission? I'm Dan Cathcart, and this is Shadows of the Messiah. The first line of defense against falling into the ways of the abominations of the Canaanites is by choosing a strong leader. God preferred that the children of Israel accept him as king and the strong leader, but he knew that they would want a person in that role, standing like Moses between them and God. So before it even happened, God set up the criteria for a king. Deuteronomy 17, verses 14 through 15. When you come into the land which the Lord your God is giving you, and possess it, and dwell in it, and say, I will set a king over me, like all the nations that are around me. You shall surely set a king over you, whom the Lord your God chooses. One from among your brethren you shall set as king over you. You may not set a foreigner over you, who is not your brother. The first two requirements are that God is the one who chooses the king, and that king is chosen from among the tribes of Israel. This process was carried out through Samuel in the selection of first Saul to be king, and then David to replace Saul. In the first choice of Saul, God gave the children of Israel what they thought they wanted. Saul looked like the perfect king. 1 Samuel 9, 1 and 2. There was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Bechorath, the son of Aphanai, a Benjamite, a mighty man of power. And he had a choice and handsome son whose name was Saul. There was not a more handsome person than he among the children of Israel. From his shoulders upward, he was taller than any of the people. Saul had a powerful father from the tribe of Benjamin. Saul was good-looking, and because he was taller than average, he stood out from among the people. But Saul suffered from vanity. For him, everything was about the outward appearance. He worried about what the people would think of him, so he did things in a way that made him look good before the people, instead of doing the things God's way. Now God rejected Saul and sent Samuel out to select a new king. At first, Samuel thought God would choose Eliab, the oldest son of Jesse from the tribe of Judah, because Eliab was much like Saul. But God instructed Samuel to look deeper than the outward appearance. Look at 1 Samuel 16, verse 7. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as a man sees. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. When God chooses a leader, he looks at the heart of that leader. When Yeshua singled out the 12 disciples for his inner circle, he did so after spending time in prayer. Mark 3, verses 13 through 14. And he went up on the high mountain and called to him those he himself wanted, and they came to him. Then he appointed 12, that they might be with him, and that he might send them out to preach. When we choose leaders over us, we must choose from among our fellow believers and let God lead us to his choice. Paul gave some outward criteria for selecting a leader in 1 Timothy chapter 3, but the final choice is up to God. Once the king is chosen, Moses lists 3 things there specifically should not do. Look at Deuteronomy 17, 16 through 17. But he shall not multiply horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt to multiply horses. For the Lord has said to you, you shall not return that way again. Neither shall he multiply wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he greatly multiply silver and gold for himself. First, a king was not to multiply horses. In the ancient times, horses were used exclusively for pulling the war chariots. To multiply horses, then, was to rely on the physical strength of their armies. God is not against armies. Now, he set up the 12 tribes of Israel according to their armies. He instructed Moses to organize them by tens, by 50s, and hundreds. The 2 censuses that were taken of the children of Israel in the wilderness were of the men who were able to go to war. So God, however, is always the one who actually brings the victory. At the crossing of the Red Sea, God swallowed up the army, specifically the chariots of Pharaoh. It was God, not the armies of Israel, that brought the victory. Moses sings about that victory after their successful crossing. Exodus 15, verse 6. Your right hand, O Lord, has become glorious in power. Your right hand, O Lord, has dashed the enemy in pieces. Moses instructed them to always look to God for their victory over their enemies, not the power of their armies. Deuteronomy 20, verse 1. When you go out to battle against your enemies and see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God is with you, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. Our battles that we face are not won by the strength of our arms, but by the power of God. Paul tells us that once we have prepared for battle, to stand in God's power. Ephesians 6, verses 10 through 11. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. The next instruction that Moses gave the children of Israel about their king was that the king was not to multiply wives, because many wives could turn his heart away from God. Both David and Solomon had multiple wives, and in each case, this led to strife within the family. In David's family, it led to rape, to murder, and treachery within his family. In Solomon's case, his wives directly led to Solomon's heart being turned away from God. 1 Kings 11, verse 4. For it was so, when Solomon was old, that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. We can look at having many wives as having many loves in our life. Sometimes these loves can serve to turn our hearts away from God. Finally, Moses cautioned the king against multiplying riches. Multiplying riches can cause the same problem as multiplying horses and multiplying wives. Laying up riches can cause us to rely on our own wealth instead of God's provision. It can cause our hearts to turn away from God, loving the wealth of this world over the wealth of God. Yeshua tells us to multiply the treasures in heaven instead of the treasures on earth. Matthew 6, verse 20. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. Finally, Moses instructs the children of Israel that their king needs to have his own copy of God's Word and read it every day. Deuteronomy 17, verses 18 through 20. And it shall be, when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write for himself a copy of this law in a book, from the one before the priests and the Levites. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, and be careful to observe all the words of this law and these statutes, that his heart may not be lifted above his brethren, that he may not turn aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left, and that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, and he and his children in the midst of Israel. David tells us that he meditates on God's words day and night. Psalm 119, 147, and 148. I rise before the dawning of the morning, and I cry for help. I hope in your word. My eyes are awake through the night watches, that I may meditate on your word. Keeping the word in our hearts helps us to live the way that he wants us to live. It keeps us humble by reminding us that all that we have comes from God. When we follow God's word, we know that we live in his kingdom. Now, what does Moses instruct about the priests? Moses tells the children of Israel that the Lord is the inheritance of both the priests and the entire tribe of Levi. Deuteronomy 18, verses 1 and 2. The priests, the Levites, all the tribe of Levi, shall have no part nor inheritance with Israel. They shall eat the offerings of the Lord made by fire, and his portion. Therefore they shall have no inheritance among their brethren. The Lord is their inheritance, as he has said to them. The entire focus of the priests and the Levite is to be on God. They do not receive land, and thus are not farmers working every day to tend the land. They are not artisans, shopkeepers, or merchants. The Levites receive the Lord's portion because of their service to the Lord. Deuteronomy 18, verse 5. For the Lord your God has chosen him out of all the tribes to stand to minister in the name of the Lord, him and his sons forever. God has set apart the Levites to minister in the name of the Lord. Their duties are all set out in the books of Leviticus and Numbers. Moses is reminding the people of their responsibility to provide for the Levites. However, this responsibility goes both ways. The Levite is responsible to faithfully carry out his duties, and it must be done from the heart. Deuteronomy 18, verses 6 through 7. So if a Levite comes from any of your gates, from where he dwells among all Israel, and comes with all the desire of his mind to the place which the Lord chooses, then he may serve in the name of the Lord his God, as all his brethren the Levites do, who stand there before the Lord. Those who stand to minister before the Lord must do so out of a sincere desire to do so. The word desire is number 185, avah, meaning to a longing, a desire, lust after, or pleasure. Those who serve the Lord must have a longing to do so. Finally, Moses tells the children of Israel that God will send them a prophet like him who will mediate between them and God. Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 16. The Lord your God will rise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brethren. Him you shall hear, according to all you desire of the Lord your God in Horeb in the day of the assembly, saying, Let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, nor let me see this great fire any more, lest I die. Moses spoke to God face to face. He went directly into God's presence and heard the words. He didn't need to rely on dreams or visions as other prophets had to do. God clarifies his special relationship with Moses when he chastises Aaron and Miriam for speaking against Moses. Look at Numbers 12, 6 through 8. And he said, Hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. I speak with him face to face, even plainly, and not in dark sayings. And he sees the form of the Lord. Why then are you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? Moses was always faithful to speak only God's words to the children of Israel, instructing them repeatedly to follow God's commandments, His statutes, and His judgments. The entire book of Deuteronomy can be looked at as one admonishment to follow the Torah that God gave to them. Earlier in the book, Moses describes how to tell whether a prophet was a true prophet or a false prophet. He said that the false prophet will try to teach a different Torah. Look at Deuteronomy 13, 1-3. If there arises among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and he gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder comes to pass, of which he spoke to you, saying, Let us go after other gods, which you have not known, and let us serve them. You shall not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams. For the Lord your God is testing you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. A false prophet may be able to perform signs and wonders just like the true prophet. However, a false prophet will teach them to follow other gods and abandon their love for the Lord. Yeshua's own words are that his followers are to love the Lord their God with all their heart, their soul, and their mind. Matthew 22, 37-38. Jesus said to them, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. This is another reason that the believer in Yeshua as their Messiah needs to know the whole Word of God. The only way to test a prophet is to measure the would-be prophet against God's Word. The Apostle John warns against false prophets in his letters to the churches. In 1 John 4:1, he writes, Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. Now we turn our attention to the second question of what these instructions reveal about Yeshua's threefold mission. When Yeshua was on earth, he fulfilled the role of the true prophet. He, like Moses, spoke with God face to face. The voice of God spoke from out of the cloud of God's glory and testified that Yeshua is the beloved Son of God. Luke 9, 34-35. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were fearful as they entered the cloud. And a voice came out of the cloud saying, This is my beloved Son, hear him. Like with Moses, they were to hear and obey his words. Yeshua taught that Israel was to return to the Lord their God and to love him with all their hearts as they carried out God's commandments. In Yeshua's death and resurrection, he began his role of high priest, not like Aaron, but of the order of Melchizedek, the eternal priest. Hebrews 5, 9-10. And having been perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all who obey him, called by God as high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. Yeshua continues his role of high priesthood today, continually making intercession for us. Hebrews 7, 24-25. But he, because he continues forever, has an unchangeable priesthood. Therefore, he is also able to save to the utmost those who come to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. Yeshua will come again to this earth, arriving as our eternal King. Acts 1, 10-11. And while they looked steadfastly toward the heavens as he went up, behold, 2 men stood by them in white apparel, who also said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus, who was taken up from you into heaven, will also come in like manner as you saw him go into heaven. Yeshua has been chosen by God from among his brethren, from the tribe of Judah. At his return, he will not rely on the force of arms or the wealth of this world. He will come seeking his one and only true bride who has made herself ready for his appearing. As the living Word of God, he knows the heart of God. He does not need to write the Torah. He is the Torah and will follow it as He rules in truth and righteousness. Thanks for watching today. I'm Dan Cathcart, and this has been Shadows of the Messiah. Shalom, and be blessed.